Without further ado then, let's move on to our first speaker, Jamie Buttrick from JB Research. Jamie is our external evaluation consultant for the My Place mentoring programme and has been involved with its delivery for the past 3 years. Over to you, Jamie.
Thanks a lot, Susan. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Buttrick. I'm one of the directors from JB Research. JB Research was appointed to evaluate the My Place mentoring programme back in November 2018 on behalf of the Scottish Civic Trust. The evaluation set out to generate the learning and the background data to not only to analyse the impact, but to inform the success of the programme at regular intervals across its 3-year duration. The My Place mentoring programme was a 3-year capacity building programme with aims to build the skills, the knowledge and the connections amongst community groups. And it had a particular focus on working with groups in marginal areas, those groups wishing to develop heritage projects. And by marginal areas, we mean those groups located in remote, rural or economically disadvantaged areas. Now, groups were given support via a dedicated My Place mentor. The support was tailored to individual circumstances. For example, it could be linked to groups' aims and objectives, their project plans, and relative skills and confidence across key areas of project development. So those could include things along the lines of governance, financial management, business planning, fundraising, communications, and just effective project management. Crucially, in terms of everyone's experiences of the last 2 years and the underlying context of today's event, the programme placed an emphasis on delivering support on a face-to-face basis. Best laid plans, eh? In the first year or so of the programme, groups appreciated the face-to-face contact and the personal and physical approach to delivering mentoring support. They stated that it helped them to share their aims and objectives effectively, provided them with the reassurance that the mentor was determined to meet their needs, meant that they paid attention to the advice and guidance that they were being provided with, but it also supported attempts to inspire and involve more members of groups to get involved in helping to achieve shared objectives, for example, by taking on more or more intensive roles. Then along came COVID. As I'm sure you're all aware, a totally unprecedented set of circumstances resulting in social distancing, closures of buildings and attractions, and a need to rethink many aspects of our everyday lives. So how did the programme respond, and what did the evaluation find? We found that the COVID-19 pandemic restricted the activities of engaged groups. A large proportion decided to take a step back, at least in the first 6 months of the pandemic. They tended to do this either by suspending their activities or by reflecting on the future of their projects. Equally, the pandemic also restricted the ability of the programme to engage with groups on site. As you can imagine, this was a particular issue for a mentoring programme where face-to-face introductions and physical meetings were a key element of the support. It also became increasingly difficult for community groups to meet physically or host fundraising events, or indeed just public meetings. This meant that people needed to embrace new and different forms of communication, adopt new ways of working, and of course, begin to meet virtually as we all are today. Crucially, these new approaches required new skills for many of the groups, but also the programme team, and also evaluators looking to speak with people who have been involved as well. Who had heard of Zoom before March 2020, and who wishes they'd bought shares in it, eh? As many of you will be aware, more than aware, it's difficult to maintain momentum and enthusiasm for projects when groups don't meet on a physical basis. The fact is, for many people, the meetings of community groups are as much about the social interactions, meeting new people, maintaining friendships, as they are about trying to achieve the community objects being discussed. Importantly, for a significant number of volunteers, the virtual experience was not for them. Others found that they simply lacked the headspace to devote time to matters outside of their own or their wider family's health. As a result, volunteers fell off the books and the progress of projects was delayed or even lost. For others, however, progress may have been made behind the scenes, but all too often it wasn't publicised. In a lot of cases, work was maintained, albeit at a reduced speed and scale, and is usually found by a core group of people, the usual suspects being kept increasingly busy. Crucially, many community groups just didn't sit on their hands, however. Reminded me of a phrase, although unknown in reality, the origins of the saying, necessity is the mother of invention. It's often linked back to the 6th century and Aesop's fables and even Plato's Republic. However, the good news is that it's equally relevant in 22nd century Aberdeenshire or the Borders. We found that resilient community groups, blessed with dedicated volunteers, were able to embrace new digitally focused ways of working. Specifically, a new hybrid approach allowed the mentoring support to continue with a combination of virtual meetings, online communication, and when allowed and or required, socially distanced visits and meetings. Amongst the outcomes of this change were reports of groups meeting more often and developing a range of new skills. This is certainly something we also saw in the mentored groups that took part in the Trust Digital Doors Open Days. All of the mentored groups responding to the consultation for the evaluation agreed, or strongly agreed, that they had used online or virtual platforms well as a group. Approximately half of them agreed that online meetings had increased attendance at meetings too. However, the evaluation findings and discussions with programme partners have also illustrated that groups need to be flexible when using digital tools in order to be most effective in terms of reach. For example, approximately half of the groups responding to the consultation stated that they had struggled to engage volunteers through online channels. The evaluation also indicated that in order to recruit a wider range of volunteers and to be more inclusive, groups also need to adopt new approaches. This probably involves using a variety of approaches which embrace the best of traditional face-to-face methods and the innovative use of digital tools and social media. This is absolutely a requirement for groups seeking funding from grant-giving bodies. As well as new opportunities, it's also important to note that the move to new hybrid approaches or using social media more effectively also represents a challenge for many groups. This is a challenge that requires new skills and, crucially, the confidence to use them. It also requires community groups themselves, but more importantly, the intended audiences, participants, or volunteers being engaged to have the required know-how, the confidence, the internet connectivity, and the IT hardware in order to access and action key messages being communicated. In addition, my wider work experience of assessing the impact of the pandemic on the delivery of a range of programmes, so that could be anything from the arts to heritage to employability support, also reminds us that we shouldn't make broad brush statements. Not all older people are afraid of iPads, and not all 18-year-olds are tech wizards. And more importantly, everyone doesn't have access to the lightning fast broadband speeds that their providers often promise. As outlined by Susan, today's sessions will focus on getting to grips with the various key social media tools, such as Facebook and Instagram, how to develop micro-volunteering opportunities, and ways in which you can diversify heritage audiences and volunteers. So without delay, over to Susan once again, who'll explain what micro-volunteering is and how to go about offering micro-volunteering opportunities. Thank you.